Hi, and welcome to Cat Run Figures. I'm your host, Caitlin, and today we are going to be reviewing Mr. Miracle issue 1. So this is the brand new maxi series from DC Comics. So I say maxi because it is a 12 issue and not your typical mini, which is anywhere from 4 to 6 or what have you. But first off, before we get on into what I thought of the actual comic and the comic itself, I was asked in an earlier comment about my history with Mr. Miracle and who exactly is Mr. Miracle. So I'm just going to do kind of a little quick summary of exactly who Mr. Miracle is, and if you guys are interested in a more explorative version of Mr. Miracle where it encompasses everything to do with Mr. Miracle, tell me in the comments below. But just your rapid, quick-fire version of Mr. Miracle. So everyone knows that in the world of Apocalypse, which is basically a warlike hellhole, there is an opposite world, which is New Genesis, which in most iterations is looked at as the better version. However, I'm not going to pick sides in this one way or the other because I've also seen versions where they're considered the bad guys. So it goes back and forth which continuity you actually select as your own main continuity. But getting right on into it, they are at war with each other. And their two leaders have finally decided to come to a truce. So the leader of Apocalypse is Darkseid, the leader of New Genesis is Highfather. And as a part of this truce, they begrudgingly decide to exchange prisoners. So these prisoners happen to be their sons. For Apocalypse, for Darkseid, it is his son Orion, which really isn't much of a loss for him. He could really care less. It's just another kid out there. But you know what? For the time being, he's happy that he can at least plot against New Genesis and have a small ceasefire. He's totally chill with that. Also, he gets to have Highfather suffer a little bit. So for Highfather, this is the worst thing he could possibly do. He's handing over his baby boy to his greatest enemy. So for him, he hands over Scott. And the two worlds exchange princes. So Orion gets taken into New Genesis, and as we know through Orion and the New Gods, he is cared for very dearly. He's held out to be another son of Orion. He is beloved. He is given the best of everything. He's well educated, and he's cherished. He's loved. Scott, on the other hand, definitely got the short end of this deal, which is instead of Darkseid even really caring that much about Scott, he hands him over to Granny Goodness, which, if you don't know who Granny Goodness is, she is probably one of the most demented characters in all of DC Comics. She loves torture. She loves manipulation. She's a member of Apocalypse. She is revered as being this horrifying woman, and rightfully so. When she took Scott under her care, she locked him in a cage, and he endured years of abuse. Basically, his entire childhood was nothing but abuse and manipulation. But this childhood made him stronger. It made him want to fight for freedom, which he learned to escape, and he was always caught every time he escaped until finally it was enough for him. It made him very determined for his freedom. And, you know, jumping past a whole bunch of storyline, he found himself on Earth. And when he finally made it to Earth, and he was finally free, he realized that here on Earth we have last names. And being from New Genesis, he doesn't have a last name. He's just Scott of New Genesis, or Apocalypse, depending how you want to define it. But he took on the last name of Free, because that is what he was now. He was free. And he later took on the mantle of Mr. Miracle. He married the love of his life, his wife Big Barda, who was also a former Fury, which is basically an elite death squad in Apocalypse. One of Darkseid's hardcore minions, but they both escaped. They came to Earth. That is where we see Mr. Miracle. Basically, to describe who Mr. Miracle is, he is the most amazing escape artist DC's Earth has ever known. Not only is he crazy intelligent, and he has a number of different special skills and abilities and equipment, and the fact that he can also manipulate dimensions is pretty damn awesome. But when Batman can't get into a room because there's no possible way of getting into it, as we saw in DC's Metal, in the early parts of DC Metal, he called on Mr. Miracle. Batman holds Mr. Miracle in that high of esteem. So, completely jumping past all of Mr. Miracle's different timelines and the different variations of him, he is an amazing creation from Jack Kirby. And they have relaunched his character in this maxi series title, and as well as several other DC Jack Kirby characters in honor of Jack Kirby's birthday, as we saw from New Gods and from the Commandy Challenge and several other things. But jumping past all that, getting right back on into the comic. So this is Mr. Miracle, issue 1 of 12. So jumping right on into the comic, we get to see Scott free. So this is Mr. Miracle without his mask, without all of the epsilon and the greatness that is the title of Mr. Miracle. And he's finally decided to challenge his two greatest enemies, which are the men who challenge him and death itself. So, unfortunately, we do get to see Mr. Miracle with 2 slit wrists. So, not a great way to see one of my favorite characters, I'm not gonna lie. So, jumping right on into the story, we get to see this great moment of a child working on his art project. And his teacher is going through asking all of the children what it is they're drawing. And this child talks about the fact that he drew God. And the teacher tells him, well, that's very nice, but no one really knows what God looks like. And he says, until now. So, continuing on, we get to see the outcome of exactly what has happened to Scott, where he's being rushed in an ambulance. We get to see Big Barda truly suffering in this waiting room, waiting to find out exactly what has happened to her husband, exactly what is going to happen to her husband moving forward. And we get to experience all of the pain from that. And Scott is laying in his hospital bed, and he's seeing Mr. Miracle on the TV telling him that I can always escape. And I know he's definitely suffering when he sees that. And something that really, really like throws itself right in your face in the entire comic is the words Darkseid is. Just literally a blacked out panel that says Darkseid is. And we get to see him as he has been removed from the hospital. He's being harassed by the press. Of course, he's not gonna talk about it. We get to see him at home. Big Barda's taking care of him, and he's still saying Darkseid is. Darkseid is. Until we get to see a boom tube. And through that boom tube, we see Orion. Remember the guy that I talked about earlier? The boy who was traded for Scott, the son of Darkseid? Well, he shows up. And he's decided he is going to teach Mr. Miracle a thing or two. So he punches him. He falls. Mr. Miracle falls to the ground. Scott falls to the ground. He tells him to stand. He punches him again. He falls to the ground again. He tells him to stand. This continues until Scott is a bloody mess on the ground, and thank God that Big Barda has woken up, and she's decided that she's gonna teach Orion a thing or two. And Orion tells him that he's teaching Scott this. And Barda, of course, comes to her husband's defense, and she's basically stating that Orion doesn't have any place to teach Scott or teach her anything. He was raised with the best of everything, with love and affection, and a great life. And she and Scott weren't. That Orion was raised as the son of Highfather, where she and Scott were raised in the pits of hell. And the fires of Apocalypse and exactly what they suffered. That only Granny can teach you. So we get to see Orion use his mother box to leave. And he's left. Big Barda is trying to comfort her husband, and there's something off. He's looking at her, and he realizes her eyes are brown, but they've always been blue before, weren't they? So we get to see that he's suffering quite a bit. He's seeing things that shouldn't be there. The world, it's hazy, like it is in this comic, like it is in this artwork, and we're seeing him throughout some of his greatest moments, and throughout what the crowd is feeling, and what he is feeling, and what Barda is feeling. And the artwork, I love the fact that the artwork is just hazy throughout all of this, because he's so hazy right now. So we get to see him in a talk show with his full Mr. Miracle outfit on, you know, outfitted out to the nines, ready to go. And he's discussing exactly what it is that happened to him. That he decided he was going to escape the greatest trap that there is. Death itself. And that's when you find out that he was found on the floor in his apartment by his wife. And that's when this talk show host says, "But you didn't really escape, did you?" And of course, there's a commercial break. So it's very hazy, it's very shaky. You don't really know what to understand 100% of the time. In this, we get to see a great moment between both Scott and Highfather. And Highfather doesn't even really want to put to words what has happened to his son. And they're talking about what is currently going on with Darkseid and the fact that he has finally obtained the anti-life equation, which means Highfather has to go up against him, and he really can't stay with his son. So continuing on, we get to see Mr. Miracle and Oberon. Oberon being one of his closest and dearest friends throughout his original tales from the 1970s to now, and they're working with another amazing feat. And Oberyn, of course, is lighting up another cigar. That's just a classic thing about his character. He's constantly smoking, he's constantly telling jokes, and he tells Scott a joke about a child who draws God, and the fact that the teacher said that no one had ever seen God before, and the child said, yeah, until now. So we find out that this story that is being told to us in the very beginning of the book was actually told by Oberyn earlier on, and Scott can't laugh at it, but Oberyn's telling him, it's fine, it's funny, and someone's at the door, and Scott's telling Oberyn, oh, it's just Barda, she just gets worried when I'm here in the studio, and Oberyn's telling him, well, she should be worried. They're all worried about him. And Scott does go to open the door, and Barda says that she really tried not to be worried, but she doesn't like him being alone in the studio like this. And Scott's telling him that he wasn't alone. He was with Oberyn. And that's when Barda looks at him, and she's upset. And she tells him that Oberyn's gone. Oberyn died last month. He passed away. Remember? The sickness? It was from all the cigars that he was constantly smoking. It hit his lungs. And finally they agreed together that he shouldn't suffer like that anymore. And we get to see in this that Scott's mental faculties aren't what they normally are. He's not remembering certain things. He's not understanding certain things. Everything is hazy. And as the story continues, Darkside is being thrown in your face every other panel. And he's not understanding. He's trying to focus on things until he gets a call in his mother box. And it's Orion. Orion's telling him that Darkside finally did it. He killed Highfather. And now Scott, being the son of Highfather, and Big Barda being who she is, they're expected to return home. The war is on. So we get to see another glorious post of all of the Jack Kirby specials coming out of this. Of course, if you didn't pick up the New God special, I would definitely suggest trying to pick it up from your local shop if you can at all, or trying to order it somewhere. Really, really great book, but once again, Darkside is. So right before they leave, we get to see Barda and Scott in their full uniforms, and they're discussing their lives, and they have a sitter for their cats and for their apartment. That everything should be fine until Scott finally tells his wife that something's wrong. That something's wrong with him. That things they aren't how they should be. And he doesn't know how to escape this. And he can't escape this. He can't. That's when Big Barda slaps him across the face. And she tells him to stand. So the act goes on. He's standing once more. And they decide to leave for New Genesis. So this is going to be continued on in the next issue of Mr. Miracle. I gotta tell you, I really enjoyed this reintroduction to Mr. Miracle. It's definitely a much sadder, much darker Mr. Miracle than what we've seen recently anyway, where Mr. Miracle, he's always been a survivor. and just, I wouldn't necessarily say a fixture of hope, but he's always been someone who can overcome anything. He can escape anything. He's just that good. But in this, he's definitely struggling for the first time. Or at least the first time we've seen him truly struggle since taking on the mantle of Mr. Miracle. Especially moving on into the War of Apocalypse and New Genesis. This is definitely going to be something that's going to be pretty great to dive on into. I really did love how the art was hazy throughout, and just the look at his mental health throughout the entire thing. It really didn't dive into it too much. It was more just hidden messages throughout, but I really did love it. I loved the art style throughout. The writing was amazing. Once again, Tom King just doing brilliant things out there. If you haven't picked this up already, I would definitely suggest at least checking out your local shop to see if it is still available. I do believe it is sold out completely on numerous different things, including previews. So definitely pick it up if you still can. I'm pretty sure that it'll be coming out into a second printing. It is doing that well right now. So yeah, give me a like if you like this video, comment below, and tell me whether or not you picked up Mr. Miracle and whether or not you enjoyed it as much as I did. Also, tell me whether or not you'd be interested in an expanded history of Mr. Miracle. That's not really something that I do very much on this channel, but I'm more than willing to do it if people are actually interested in seeing that kind of thing. I am by no means an expert in Mr. Miracle. He is just a character that I truly love, and someone that I love to read anything that he's a part of. So as always, subscribe to my channel for more comic book content, or check out any of the older videos I have up for offer here on Catherine Figures. And until next time, I'm your host, Caitlin. Bye.